You're listening to the InFocus Interview Show, brought to you by photofocus.com, an online publication filled with education and inspiration for visual storytellers. This episode is made possible by our partners, Lume Cube, the world's most versatile light, and Drobo, a smart storage solution. Now here's your host, Vanelli.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vanelli. Now, my guest is an award-winning photographer who has been sharing his knowledge and love for photography for close to 40 years. He is currently the new president of PPA. Please welcome Gregory Daniel. How you doing, Greg?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much. I can't believe that we have spent this much time in the same area and not seen each other before.
I know. We were just talking about that earlier, how over 20 years ago, I saw Dr. Galt, a good friend of mine, and a friend of yours, is you did a beautiful portrait of their children. And again, this was over 20 years ago. You were one of the first people, if not the first, to mix media, photography and painting. It just looked like a canvas painting that was just absolutely stunning. And so I remember questioning her, saying, "Well, is he a painter or is he a photographer?" And she just had this look on her face, like kind of both. So, but you did amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing
Thank you so much. That came about over about 20 years ago. We shifted from being a wedding photographer. I mean, we were doing high-end weddings for many, many years and at the top of our game. It just wasn't doing justice to our family on the weekends when we were traveling so much and our kids were going to school. So I decided to really change my whole theme of where we were going. And we were in a gallery back in the early 90s, at the beginning of the 90s. We were in an art gallery, and it was full of realistic ballerina paintings. And I just fell in love with that whole concept. My wife is a ballet dancer, and that's what her degree was in. And so I had a real love for the arts. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is this? And one of the paintings was $80,000, and there was one just like it that was $8,000. And I asked the curator to explain it to me, and he said, well, this is a reproduction, embellished reproduction by the painter, and this is how they do it, through Photoshop and some other things, and this technique that the artist started to adopt back in the early 90s when digital was starting to become popular. And so I thought, well, that's something I could offer my clients, to be able to create personalized art that just specifically for them using this type of process. So we were one of the very early adopters and have been teaching it in master classes throughout the years. And it's just been such a wonderful thing and really good for my soul.
Well, that's incredible. Now, so throughout your career, I mean, you've done a lot. You said portrait, you've done wedding photography, into the portraits, and of course, teaching a lot of the master classes. Sandra Pierce, she was another one who I ran into that spoke very highly of you. And even like I told about Skip Cohen, who lives close or is a good friend of mine, when I said we live close to each other, he was like, Vanelli, I can't believe you two have never met. And because there's so many different genres in our style of photography. So you coming up almost 40 years now in business, how have you seen it change?
Oh, it's been wonderful in ways and difficult in ways, but I think it's just all on how you see it. I mean, for me, the major change, obviously, is the digital world and that we went through. And so many photographers, I think, had a really struggled time. They struggled with that time of that transition. For me, it fell right into my vision, right? And it gave me the tools to create what was in my head and be able to transfer it onto canvas and then, offer these beautiful personalized pieces for our clients. And we design these pieces uniquely for their homes to go in to go in the home like an interior designer would. So it was something that we embraced early on and we went through, but it was really difficult, I know, for lots of other photographers that really had a hard time with that change.
Great. Well, Gregory, our topic is success through PPA. And congratulations, you're the new acting president for PPA. And that's no small feat. So let's share your story about that. So, how is your success through PPA?
Well, it really, I think the underlying theme of my life has been that somebody's been there to support me. There's always been somebody behind me and touching my shoulder and breathing life into me. And so it really started back when I was 12. When I was 12 years old, and I took a photography class, and my instructor, our initial thing that we were supposed to do is just go out and take a roll of film, come back, and he was going to teach us how to process it. And so I went on my 10-speed bike downtown, and I went into a really, really old, dilapidated area, this very depressed area of town, taking photographs of things, tires and buildings and things like that. And then I ran across this old gentleman that had life all over him. I mean, he had wrinkles and veins you could see all over him. And for whatever reason, I asked permission to photograph him, and he gave me permission. It was on this front porch, and it was in a one-room kind of shanty that he lived in. And he gave me permission to photograph him. I took it back to school, and I remember in the darkroom seeing that image come up in the tray, which, I mean, some people can relate if you actually have done the darkroom work. And my instructor leaned over to me and he said, "You have a gift." And it just blew me.
Wow.
It just overwhelmed me and blew me away. And he said, "You need to go back to that man and you need to give him this photograph." And so I got back on my 10-speed bike the next day, and I ran down to that guy and I handed him that photograph, and he looked at it and he just cried. And this old man, and he just wept with tears. And he looked at me and he put his hand on my wrist and he said, "You have a gift, young man." And I can tell you, everything I do has a little bit of those guys, those guys in everything that I create. Because, I mean, I'm creating it from the soul, but I'm able to breathe life into other people along the way as I do it. I went on into being the annual staff photographer and photographing, a lot of folks can relate to that, photographing in the annual staff for my middle school and my high school. And when I was in high school, I met this gentleman that was the actual professional photographer. He worked for Brand Allen at the time. And he was part of a camera store, and I worked at the camera store, and he had the photography studio in the camera store. And so he taught me how to do weddings. I did lots of weddings with him, and he taught me the whole craft. And I would call it more like combat photography, but it was doing weddings as a young guy, getting $25 a wedding. So that was quite some time ago. That was back in the later 70s. And then he actually went out of business, and because we were only getting a little bit of money for doing what we were doing. So he went out of business, and I ended up taking all the contracts that were left on the book. So I had to start my business when I was 19 years old. Went on to college and got a photography degree. And I heard nothing about PPA all through this period of time. Heard nothing about PPA going through college. And then out of college, I meet my gorgeous, incredible wife, Lisa, and she looked at the books as we were doing these weddings going, we are actually paying for these people for us to do these weddings. And she signed me up. She saw a magazine, and at the back of the magazine, photography magazine, it had an ad for a traveling Winona class, and it was PPA, Professional Photographers of America. And they were traveling around with masters, and the two masters were Bud Haynes and a guy named Tom McDonald out of Arkansas. And Tom McDonald, I was that guy in the class. It was a business class. She says, "You need to go to this business class and figure out what we're doing wrong." And so I signed up for PPA and went to this class, and I was that guy in that front row, just leaning in, asking all the crazy questions. And for whatever reason, that Tom McDonald, he embraced me. And by the end of the week, he put his arm around me as we're getting a photograph of the first merit that I ever got for PPA towards a degree program. And so that first mayor, he put his arm around me, and as they were taking that picture, he leaned over to me and said I had a gift. And he stayed with me until now. I mean, so for me, PPA it became my family. It became my support system. It became my professional association for my craft. And so from that point on, it was just all about being mentored, meeting mentors, mentoring back, giving back to the association. So that was what introduced me to PPA. And PPA has just been an umbrella. It's been my my catching point. I've been surrounded by all these like-minded professionals that have just grown me, and I've helped grow others as well.
Well, that's incredible. Now, you've already touched base on some of the benefits of PPA. That's mentorship and, again, bonding. Because you're with people that are in the trenches and they know exactly how you feel, coming up through. There are so many other benefits with PPA. One is the insurance, which and I joke with people and say, if you're going to join PPA for anything, the insurance itself is worth its membership. Could you explain more about the insurance?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the insurance, it's actually, when you do the numbers, it's actually less than expensive to be a member than not a member if you want to insure your equipment. And also the insurance is crafted for photographers. It's insurance for photographers, so that when you're on your job and someone steals something, a piece of equipment, or you lose it or damage it, for whatever reason, you have the backing of the professional association that understands what you're doing and understands your loss, right? And also, if you go overseas, you're covered overseas, where a lot of the insurance companies aren't. So it's much it's much more for our profession, for our association, and for our members for that, the equipment insurance. So that comes with it. The other thing that would come with membership that is just all part of it is your indemnification insurance as well. Your indemnification program that helps you if something happens, if something wrong happens. And so that's a great benefit. But there's so many other benefits. There's the education that's behind it, the seminars, the conventions, the webinars, and all the other benefits that go along with it.
Yeah, and then there was one thing is with PPA, you do a lot of emphasis on business. A good example was your copyright sheets that you give away for free. So, I often hear photographers, portrait photographers say, well, I want a model to sign a model release form, but I don't know where to begin. Join PPA. They have a slew of legal documents that you could download and you could use them. Just, they'll tell you, change, the name on it and tailor fit it to your business. But I think one of the number one goals for PPA, other than the education part of it, is the business classes, pushing people to become more professional and gain a better income as a photographer.
Yeah, there's an area on there called the Business Challenge, which a lot of folks have gone through the Business Challenge, and it's a whole series, an educational series that you can participate in. So just look that up when you get on the site, Business Challenge, and it takes you through a whole series of webinars and discussions, and kind of culminates every year at Imaging, where they all get together and they all go to a class together, get their photograph taken together, and kind of mix and actually see each other. The folks that have gone through the classes together, that challenge together. So there's lots of things like that. And right now, we're currently really, really focused on bridging that gap between the client and the consumer and the photographer, because it just seems like as the years go by, we're starting to get away from, the further away we get from what the client really needs, identify what they need, the further we get away from that, the more we're all going to struggle together, right? The whole industry is going to start weighing down, because the consumer is going to go someplace else to satisfy their actual needs. And so what I mean by that is that, I've been in the industry from the beginning of where really the products were centralized and designed and built for our clients and for their needs, for their homes or whatever they needed for, whether it was giving gifts or something like that. A prime example would be a wedding album, for example. It was all about the design and creation, taking the photography, the imagery, based on the client's desire and need, having that checklist, building that album. So it was all built around, finally producing and handing over that final product, right? And so they have something to have and hold and have it as a legacy item. And and there was this time where the pendulum swung all the way over to just because you can, maybe you probably shouldn't, and that would be just photographing and just providing them with digital imagery. And what happens is all of a sudden they realize over some time that didn't really satisfy the need that they really wanted. And so we've had many cases, past clients that have come to us after they've had their wedding photography done and said, can you do something with this? Can you create a product like an album for us? And it hurts me when we go that far where we don't really understand or find what the need is that client really wanted. Now, if that's all they wanted at the very beginning, I'm sure there's digital solutions for that. But also, I think we're doing the industry a disservice if we don't realize what their need is and what they want, and then create products that, a suite of products that solve that solution of their need, which can range from digital, but quite certainly very much don't leave out the physical product piece of it.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, and like you said, I love the analogy of the pendulum swinging. It went from, one where, like, I look at my parents' 1949 wedding album that's just absolutely gorgeous. And then all of a sudden, the 90s, when, like you said, the late 90s, where, oh, hey, no problem. I'm sorry, the 2000s, where they would say, hey, just give us the digital images. I don't care about anything else. We'll put the albums together ourselves. And you look back at it thinking, there's a gap there. There's something to where people are going to realize afterwards, oh man, I really wish I did go the traditional route and got those albums printed. And if God forbid they erase or they lose all those digital files, now what? They have nothing. If they don't back it up properly, they have nothing to show, the next generation.
Yeah, and I think a lot, it's no fault of anyone except for the environment of going into this digital revolution where the equipment became easier to access, professional equipment, and the imagery being created became, a lot easier to deal with, right? And then there was so much information out there, but the business foundation, the business section of it wasn't necessarily being either sought after or understood or taught, right? So what's happened is that PPA is seeing that when they call bridging the gap, it's taking into that assessment how far is this gap now, and can we create products? Can we create content? Can we help with the educational piece of it that can add as a piece of puzzle into their whole picture of their business and make them stronger so that they are in a business model that is sustainable for them? And it also is creating products and helping clients with their actual needs. So that becomes a win-win. When both sides win, that's when there's great harmony, and you have a sustainable business that you love, and that's not just burning your daylights out and working on Photoshop every day, and all night long, and just giving you the ability to create a business that you dream of, right? And to create products that your clients really, really need.
Well, that's great. So I'm noticing you're placing a lot of emphasis on education, which I absolutely love. With that, I know PPA, they offer like merit badges. They offer different things, the whole curriculum for people that want to become educators and teachers. you put them through a rigorous training.
Yeah, I mean, well, through our, you might be referring to our degree program,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the degree program. So the one of my mentor, Tom McDonald, at the very beginning, I asked him what is it I should do next? I should take these classes. What kind of classes do you recommend? Blah, blah. So he gave me a series of classes that he thought I would like to do. Maybe some affiliate schools that were out there. Texas School is one of them right now.
Yep.
And we were a student in the beginning, and we've been educators at that school for a long time now. But those are type of areas where you can go get your education, and it's all part of the affiliate program towards your degrees. But the first thing that he said I should do, and this was back in the early 80s and when the program just originally started, and it was the certification program. He said, you should become a CPP, a certified professional photographer. That program will help you with the foundational principles, that technical basic toolbox that you need to build up. And so it's the foundation of those skills. And so that's what I really would recommend to a lot of people that are entering into this, is that go for that CPP to build that toolbox up, to create and hone your skills in that toolbox so that you can feel comfortable and confident when you go into a job, that you can create the pieces that the clients need, and that you're not just really kind of narrow pathed in your operations.
Yeah, we talked about this before. Like, people go to a workshop or a seminar, and they take amazing photos because the workshop set up the models, the workshop designed the set, the workshop set the style, and all the photographer had to do was walk in, set the camera, take a picture. The lights were set up for them, but the ones that would put that into their portfolio, I warned them against it and just said, look, are you able to reproduce what you just shot on your own without any help whatsoever? Well, yeah, I can. Well, great. Then before you put that piece in your portfolio, try to recreate it and come back to me. Sure enough, they came back and said, oh my God, I didn't realize how many moving parts there were to a simple photo shoot. It looked easy, but and I tried to explain, don't get discouraged. You're new to it. You're not expected to know this, everything from beginning to end. Practice makes perfect. I'm going to rephrase that. Perfect practice makes perfect. If you keep practicing the proper way, it'll be ingrained into you to where when you have to do it on your own, it's there. I mean, think back when we were learning how to drive for the first time. We had our passenger, our parent, or somebody with us that are there just in case something goes wrong. And then the moment you get your license, you could drive on your own. I don't know how it was for you, but for me, I do remember freaking out. I'm in the car by myself for the first time, and it was my oldest brother, John, who was the undefeated heavyweight champion in kickboxing. It was his car. And I remember driving on 690, which is like 95. And I remember being petrified, thinking, I wish I had somebody in the car to help me. And obviously I made it through. But it's the same thing where I feel if people join organizations such as PPA, you have that person next to you as a safety net, to where if something doesn't work, you could turn to that person and say, hey, what did I do wrong here? And that's where the education comes in. So now, Greg, let's talk about how PPA is helping members during the quarantine period, but we have to take a quick break to thank our partners.
Lume Cube. Lume Cube is proudly known as the world's most versatile light. It's the smallest, lightest, most compact professional lighting solution on the market. Lume Cube represents the future of LED lighting and is a must-have for anyone looking to create better photos and video. Check out the new Lume Cube strobe, offering anti-collision lighting for drones at lumecube.com. Drobo. Drobo is a smart storage solution that protects photos, videos, and more from hard drive failure, giving peace of mind for the working pro or serious amateur who have a lot of external drives cluttering up their desktop. Save 10% at drobostore.com with the coupon code PHOTOFOCUS.
And we're back with award-winning portrait photographer and PPA president, Gregory Daniels. Now, before we took the break, the question was, how is PPA helping its members during the quarantine period?
Well, yeah. I mean, for one, I would recommend, I'll talk about a few things here, but mainly I would say the takeaway here would be go to PPA, because PPA has, go to PPA.com, because PPA has opened up a whole section of its website and information to everyone, whether you're a member or not a member, whether you're just a creative or not. You don't even have to be a photographer. And you can go to ppa.com/inittogether, and it'll come up with a centralized hub place where it's COVID everything, during this period of time. And so it has things like, it's opened up the portal to all this free education. We've opened up our website for all free education for you, and webinars and government assistance and all the news updates. So that page, if you'll go in there and take a look at that, it will really help you in all these different areas. I've put out on Facebook not too long ago, I put out a whole series about this, and a whole lot of folks other than photographers, lots of creatives and lots of other business owners saw that, have gone to these pages. I've received so many messages back thanking us, thanking PPA for this information, because it's applicable to all small businesses. I mean, so if you're struggling, looking into how to, deal with the PPPs, the Paycheck Protection Program, or, the quick assistance that you could get for grants. What we've created webinars. Our chief financial person put webinars in place so for us to take a look at and walk through this. So that's in that area. We're up at the Hill doing all kinds of copyright, protection for our creatives and not just photographers, right? It's creatives with art and film and, painting and just all the creatives that are out there. We're trying to help with copyright. So we have a lot of connections up there. And so through those connections, we've been lobbying for greater relief packages for photographers and other small businesses. And one of the things that we heard early on were the crying help for wedding photographers, because they were dealing with tons of cancellations, with contract cancellations. And so we put some information in here about how to navigate through those cancellations of the contracts. So that's a whole section of it in there. Let's see what other things. Certainly lots of webinars, and we actually are producing a series of webinars to help you during this period of time, so that when you get through this really difficult time that we're having, you come out the other end running, instead of, thinking about what you're going to do afterwards. So during this period of time, I would encourage everybody to really sharpen that skill package. I know we talked earlier before the break about the difference between seeking out education just on tools, like how to do a wrench better, right? Or how to use the screwdriver better, or how to swing a hammer better. Those are all great things that we have to do. And you can get lots of online videos to understand how to do those individual things. But to be able to have that toolbox and then use it for a purpose, that's a different world, right? That's a different thing. And that's the business side of it. Now that I have these tools I know how to use, how do I actually implement those tools, and which ones only make sense for what I'm really trying to do and accomplish from a business perspective? So I really encourage everybody to go in there and do that. And if you're a PPA member, we also just came out with a creation of an In It Together education voucher, which for this purpose, it's $30 if you are a PPA member, and you can apply it to entering print competition. You can apply that $30 towards that. You can apply it to any of the educational things, like we have affiliated programs that people teach in their studios throughout the year, and those classes, you can use it for that. Anything that's educational related within PPA, you can use that $30 voucher. But lots and lots of stuff on that site. I would encourage everybody to go take a look at it.
Well, that's amazing. Because I knew you did it for your members. I didn't realize you opened it up to everybody. I mean, that's absolutely astounding. So I'll make sure we push that big time. And I like how you're giving photographers the information they need if they need to file government, relief for the relief programs, because a lot of them are just stuck. It's interesting how if you want to become a doctor, they make you take business classes. You still have to take a business class because they don't want doctors to be out of work or have poor business practices. Photographers need the same thing. They need to understand business, no matter how great we are as photographers. We have to make sure that we're running our business, and for you to supply stuff like that for everyone, not just your members, to have a place to look at and say, well, where can I find the relief program? What are things I can do to help me during this time? I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, it swings back. It just circles all the way back around to the beginning of this discussion, and how I went through college. I have a photography degree in college, and I really knew nothing about business. Even though I had a business class in college, I really didn't know really what business was all about until my first class through PPA, through the Traveling Winona program, the business class. It was a week-long program, and that's where it was Tom McDonald and Bud Haynes. And they taught me how the business is structured, how much I should be spending on my cost of goods, how much I should be spending on marketing, how much I should earmark towards, having either a brick and mortar building or working out of my house. Just all of that, just how to structure my categories, or if I wanted to be working in styles, or what I wanted to do for weddings, or senior photography, or more like sports photography, things like that. So it was all business related, and that foundation really is when I started taking all these little tools that I had learned in the toolbox that I knew how to use. I just didn't know how to use them together in harmony to create a sustainable business model. And so without PPA, I wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be near as successful. And it's not just about me. I wouldn't be able to share this gift with other people and actually successfully create products that they need and desire and want.
Well, that's amazing. Well, Greg, thanks so much for taking time out today and sharing your talents and your stories.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and I'm so glad we finally got to hook up and do this. It's been quite busy doing these discussions, and I've wanted to do this with you for a month now, and so hopefully we'll get together and have some sushi.
You got it. Yep, and I'll make sure when Skip Cohen comes to town, and Sandra Pierce, Pearson will bring all of them together, and we'll have a little catch up. We'll have a little catch up party. Well, thank you so much. And I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye now.
You are listening to the InFocus Interview Show. If you like these interviews, be sure to subscribe to our weekly Photo Focus podcast on photofocus.com. Thank you for joining us.